Level 1. The negative balance. There's a number on your screen, and it has a minus sign in front of it. It might be negative $11. It may be 300. The actual amount is almost beside the point because what happens next doesn't care how you got there or why. The system doesn't ask, it just responds. Within hours, sometimes within minutes, the fee posts. $35 at most banks. And if 3 separate charges hit your account while that balance is sitting below zero, 3 separate transactions, maybe small ones. You don't owe 1 fee, you owe 3, $105, on top of the deficit you were already carrying, on top of the reason you went negative in the first place. Think about the logic of that for a second. You are being charged money for not having money. The less you have, the more it costs you to have less. There's no version of that equation that helps the person on the wrong side of it. You go to pay for gas. The card declines. You try again. It declines again. There are people behind you and you are doing math in your head that won't finish fast enough. And the pump is still waiting, and the card is still useless, and everyone is watching you figure out that you cannot afford $14 of gasoline right now. That moment, not dramatic, not cinematic, just that quiet public humiliation at a gas station. That is what financial stress actually feels like from the inside. The bank's solution is called overdraft protection. What that means in practice is that the bank will let the transaction go through, cover the difference, and charge you for the privilege of not being embarrassed at the pump. They frame it as a service, and technically it is. It prevents the decline. It just costs $35 every time it saves you. A single recent year saw American banks collect over $7 billion in overdraft fees. $7 billion. And the majority of that money came from a small group of accounts, the same people repeatedly paying over and over for the same thing, being poor in a system that charges you to be poor. You cannot call someone at the bank and explain your situation. There's no one to call. There's an automated system that assessed a fee based on one data point. Your balance was negative. That's it. It doesn't know your paycheck was 2 days late. It doesn't know the charge that pushed you under was a subscription you forgot existed. It doesn't know your name. You are not a customer at this level. You are a liability they're trying to price. Level 2. The low balance. You pulled it back. The account is no longer negative, and that feels like progress because it is. You have $200 in there, sometimes $400, occasionally close to $600 before rent month hits and strips it down again. You are not overdrawn, but you are also not what this bank would call a priority. The maintenance fee shows up every month, $12, $15, gone. Not because you did anything wrong, because your average daily balance didn't clear the threshold. At most banks, that threshold sits somewhere around $1,500. At some, it's $500. If you had that money sitting untouched, the fee would vanish automatically. But because you don't, you pay every month to store money you barely have in an account that is supposed to help you keep it. The savings account earns you almost nothing, 0.01%. Meanwhile, the bank is lending your deposits out at 7, 12, 24% depending on the product. The gap between what they pay you and what they earn on your money is the entire business model of banking. At your balance level, you're just not large enough for them to compete for you. You try to get a credit card. What you're offered, if you're offered anything, is a secured card, which means you hand the bank a deposit, your money, and they use it as collateral to give you a credit limit. You're lending them money so they can lend it back to you and charge interest on it. This is not predatory, this is just normal. This is how credit gets built when you're starting at the bottom. The service you get here is not mean. Nobody is cruel to you. The app works. If you call with a problem, someone eventually answers and walks you through the script and solves standard things. What you don't get is attention. What you don't get is relationship. You are a small account in a large system, and the large system processes small accounts automatically. You are a number here, a small number, and small numbers get managed, not cultivated. Level 3. Stable income. The direct deposit hits every 2 weeks, consistent. $3,200, maybe more. You didn't announce anything. You didn't tell the bank things were better, but the algorithm noticed. The pattern shifted from irregular and low to predictable and moderate, and something in the system responded. The credit card offers start arriving in your app. Not the secured card, real cards with real limits. $2,000, $3,000, $3,500. The rates are still high, 22, 24%, because your history is short and the bank is still hedging. But the door that was closed 6 months ago is open now, not because anything changed about you as a person, because the data profile you generate became viable as a revenue source. The monthly fee disappears. Your direct deposit qualifies for a waiver. That's $12 to $15 you stop losing, and it feels like more than it should because you were paying it long enough for its absence to register. You need a personal loan, $5,000 for a car repair. You apply. It's approved in 2 days at 11%. Not a great rate, but functional. The thing that stands out is simpler than that. It worked. You needed something, you asked for it, and the institution gave it to you. For the first time, banking functioned the way you were told it was supposed to. You are a customer now, recognized, serviceable, worth keeping. Not precious, not prioritized, but you exist to them in a way that you didn't before, and that difference is real. Level 4. Growing savings and assets. Nobody handed you anything. You were consistent, ordinary and consistent, which over several years turns into something that looks unusual from the outside. $18,000 in savings, $22,000 invested. The credit card gets paid in full every month, which means the 24% rate is academic. It never touches you. The credit limit increases start happening on their own. You log in and the number has changed. 4,000 becomes 9. 9 becomes 14. The bank is extending more rope to someone who has proven they don't need it. When you buy a car this time, the rate isn't 11%, it's 6.8. Not because the bank likes you more, because your profile has shifted the risk calculation. Lending you money is safer now than it was before, and safer lending costs less. The price of money is dropping for you as your position strengthens. This is the part that most people miss. Wealth doesn't just compound through investment returns. It compounds through the cost of everything you buy with credit. Lower rates mean more capital stays in your hands. More capital in your hands accumulates faster than less capital does. The system begins tilting quietly in your favor, a few basis points at a time. If you walked into a branch and told them you were thinking about leaving, someone would try to stop you with an offer. That is not something that happened at level 2. Level 5. High savings and assets. Combined assets above $150,000. You are not wealthy by what comes later in this conversation, but you are in the top tier of what most retail branches process on any given day. There's a different phone number now, a priority line. The hold time is shorter. The person who answers has more authority to waive fees, make exceptions, approve things without sending you somewhere else. When something goes wrong, it gets resolved in the same call. A dedicated banker may be assigned, a name, an email, someone who actually knows your account before you explain it. The relationship is still commercial. They are attentive because retention metrics exist, and your account is worth retaining. Understanding that doesn't make the access less real. Pre-approved products start arriving in your app. Mortgage pre-qualification, investment options, premium cards with actual rewards instead of symbolic ones. The institution is no longer just serving your current balance. They are pricing your future. You are a preferred client, flagged, named in the system as worth protecting. Level 6. High net worth. Somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million in investable assets, the bank stops being a place you go and becomes a service oriented around you. Wealth management is offered, investment advisory, tax coordination, estate planning, bundled into one relationship. The quality varies. Some advisors are exceptional. Some are expensive salespeople in good suits. You learn to tell the difference because the difference has a dollar value attached to it. The conversations change. You are no longer being pitched products. Someone is asking about your goals, your timeline, your family, your legacy. The motivation behind those questions is still commercial. A full picture of your finances allows them to capture more of your financial life. But the experience is genuinely different. Both things are true at once. Loan approvals don't take 2 days anymore. Wire issues get resolved in the same conversation. No callbacks, no scripts, no escalation to someone with more authority because the person you're already talking to has it. You are not a customer here. The word the industry uses internally is asset. And the distance between an asset and a customer at level 2 is not a matter of better service. It is a different institution operating inside the same building. Level 7.
very high net worth. Above 5 million in investable assets, the bank begins offering things that aren't published anywhere. Products that don't appear on the website, rates that aren't on any board, access to investment vehicles that require accredited investor status, and minimum commitments most people will never reach. The mortgage rate available to you isn't the posted rate. It is a negotiated rate, meaningfully lower. And over the life of a 30-year loan, that difference is not minor. It is tens of thousands of dollars. Your advisor is not a generalist. You have specialists. One for investments, one for tax strategy, one for estate structures and trust planning. They coordinate with each other.
They meet with you quarterly in a room that doesn't look like the lobby. The policies that govern retail banking, the waiting periods, the minimums, the approval timelines, still technically apply at this level. What changes is that the bank's internal policies have discretion built into them, and that discretion is consistently exercised in favor of accounts that generate significant revenue. The rules don't disappear, they just bend in one direction. Level 8. Private banking. This is a different product from wealth management the way a private charter is a different product from first class. They both arrive at the destination. The experience does not compare. Your private banker manages fewer than 20 relationships. That is their entire job. They know your children's names, they know about the foundation, they know what you're building and what you're trying to protect, and they have direct access to decision makers inside the institution who can create arrangements that exist nowhere in any standard product catalog. The deals here are made, not selected. Interest rates on loans are negotiated in conversation, not pulled from a rate table. Investment minimums are waived because the relationship justifies it. Transactions that would take a retail customer 2 weeks of paperwork are handled in 48 hours because the people processing them have been told whose account this is. The system becomes flexible. That sentence needs to be said honestly. Banks do not break laws for wealthy clients. What they do is exercise every legal degree of internal discretion available in one direction consistently without being asked. Fees that technically apply are waived before you notice them. Exceptions that require manager approval are approved before the manager is formally consulted. The system that was automated and indifferent at level 1 is now human, attentive, and oriented toward yes. You are not a client here. You are a relationship, a named line item in someone's annual review. Losing you would affect people whose careers are measured in part by not losing you. That is a different kind of leverage than anything else in this conversation, and most people will never know it exists.